Good morning, everyone. So, I sort of feel like I get to welcome you to Jacksonville. I'm a Coloradan. I was raised in Denver. My mom lives in Jacksonville, and I'm pretty sure last night when I got home around midnight, sneaking in on a Saturday night, after midnight, she was having flashbacks from several decades ago, thinking, it doesn't change. It's the same kid I had years ago sneaking into my house. Where was he? So, so you've heard. I'd like to walk. I'm sleep deprived and over caffeinated, so I'm gonna have to move a little bit to make sure that I address the points that are appropriate. But I've been asked to give you a talk about what's happening across the country. And so my current role, and as you heard, I was some people in the guidance. And thank you, Colorado. You guys are so great. They're all up front. Thanks for being up front. And I know what they're thinking. They said, we flew all the way down here to listen to you again. Haven't we heard this before? Yes, you've heard this before. Okay, so I was the principal, it says in the booklet, I was the principal author of the concurrent enrollment legislation in Colorado. It's called House Bill 1319. That's true. I like to describe it as I was the principal instigator. I was the one who was causing trouble. I was the one pushing the governor out front and say, no, this is good, do it. Yes, it should be free. Push him. We'll make it work, don't worry. So I'll tell you a little bit about that story, but now I'm working in a role with the Education Commission of the States. And just as a brief moment to tell you who we are, in case maybe you're from a K-12 environment, you're not sure of who this Education Commission of the States is. Sounds good, sounds important. Not sure who they are. The Education Commission of the States, we are a national compact. We were created 50 years ago by the states for the states. And so what we do is governors in states across the country appoint commissioners in their states, and they help inform our policy agenda. And what we attempt to do is provide support to that intersection of education and politics. And we try to help make sure that there's good information. We don't take sides, we don't get involved in the partisanship, but we do try to provide good information as they're working through whatever issues the states intend to take on. So our role is one where we work with governors and chief state school officers, we work with state executive directors in higher education, we work with systems, but our focus is really on the state level policy. And so we're not practitioners on the campuses, but we work a lot with organizations that are. And we've been monitoring dual enrollment, concurrent enrollment for several years. In fact, I think our first major policy brief came out in 2006, which started helping states identify what these emerging practices looked like. And as many of you know, in 2006, most of us were, that's kind of the dark ages for concurrent enrollment policy. Most of your states, we monitor every day your states. We watch legislation going through in every single state in the country, and we produce it on our website. And so if you're ever interested, ecs.org, it's a very easy site to remember. But if you're wanting to know what other states are doing, or maybe during this conference, you hear something about not just good things in Colorado, there are good things in New Mexico, there are great things in Washington, there are good things going on in states throughout the country. If you hear that, and you want to know more about what that law looks like, or maybe you want to try and go to your legislator and say, hey, take a look at this idea, please come to our website. We do maintain all states' legislation regarding dual enrollment, and we will launch in 2 weeks. We will launch the nation's first comprehensive analysis of every state's concurrent enrollment policies. And we'll talk a little bit about that and how we're evaluating. I keep thinking that this stage, that there's not a back here, like I'm gonna fall off the back. So if you see me look down, I apologize, that's a little distracting. But we will launch in 2 weeks an analysis of every single state. And so if you want to compare your state to another state, we'll be able to provide you with a side-by-side. And again, we don't take sides. We don't say that's good, that's bad. We say here's an idea that is working in states. Is it available in your state? And that's as far as we're going to go, but I think it's helpful, it's instructive as states begin to start looking at, well, what do we do next? Or you hear these great ideas during this conference, you'll see those as they emerge. And so I'm hopeful that you'll be able to see that. And so again, we monitor your legislation and not in kind of that creepy NSA kind of way. There are other people who do that. We monitor what comes out of public record. And so we're looking at governor's speeches, we're looking at rules that are passed, we're looking at reports that come out, and so we try to make those available to all of you. But I'll tell you, it's also a privilege. We've been invited over the last, even just the last couple of months, it's been pretty active. Just this week, I had a conversation with Washington on Tuesday. And on, Thursday, we had a team go up to Wyoming and spend some time with their community college system. What day is it? Friday, the Oregon team, we met with them. And so we're seeing a lot of activity there, a lot of states asking questions. We field calls every day from legislators saying, how do I do this? And a lot of what the answers are that we give them are what you'll hear shortly. So before moving to some of the features of what we think are the critical elements of state policies and the things that will help grow dual enrollment and concurrent enrollment, let's first give some context to what you just heard from Sherry. So you heard from Sherry, Lumina Foundation has set a goal, their big goal, the goal 2025, that's what they call it. And it's 60% degree attainment for the nation. And you heard that, each state's a little different. Maybe your state has set a benchmark for an attainment rate. Maybe you're familiar with that. Most states have. So most governors have said, we need to have X number of college graduates by some date certain. So most states have done that. Most of that is sort of in the aspirational rhetoric of the governors. And here's where we're going to go, aren't we, team? Let's go. And then the people like you say, okay, now what? Now let's dig in and make that work. But I think Sherry's right, there's an opportunity now. And I think concurrent enrollment, dual enrollment is more relevant today than it ever has been. This is perhaps one of the most important policies for making that goal a reality. Because as you know, this is not about saying to students, we're going to prepare you for a system and send you off. This is about preparing students for an opportunity today and making it an immediate reality. And I think what's really exciting to governors and legislators and others that I spend a lot of time talking to is that there's an immediacy to dual enrollment policy. You can create new good policies that have an impact next fall. This is not waiting 4 years down the road for when those students eventually graduate from high school. This is about making changes today that will have an impact tomorrow. I think there's something very that's very salient with those legislators, and they really feel like this is a great opportunity for them. But for those of you who are in the back of the room checking your email, do me a favor and kind of flip your phone over to the calculator, and I want you to help me think through what this reality means. Okay, so it's okay. I see your eyes are down. It's fine. It's totally fine. It's Sunday morning, and my pastor at my church, he'd say, hey, if you're checking your email right now, will you tweet somebody and say something good about, so it's kind of this funny little thing that he does. So, but think about this. What is the current national average high school graduation rate? You have a sense of that? 75. Good, 75, 74. Let's just say it's 3/4, somewhere thereabouts. Okay? So you have the big goal. So you have the 60% degree attainment rate, big goal. So if you're in the back and you have those calculators handy, you can do these numbers. It's really easy. 0.60, 60%, divided by 0.74, 0.75. Pick your number, pick your state. What'd you get? Yell it out. 80%. Great. So here is something that I hope begins to sink in with us. 80%. What that number represents is that's the number of students graduating from high school that not only have to go to college, that's the number of high school graduates that have to finish college to meet the 60% target. So we're not talking about 60% of just anyone. We're talking about the number of students who actually finish high school and just start with the population there. And I'm not saying the other students won't eventually go back to college, but let's just start with the known number, and the known number is about 75% graduate, and if you want to reach 60% attainment rate, that means 80% of your students not only go, but they finish. And so how do we, what college here graduates 80% of their students? Anyone? A couple? Maybe some private schools? One or two? How many community colleges retain 80%? I used to work at a community college, so welcome to our reality. But this begins to sink in, and so now it's not about just preparing them for some, system outside of our system. It's now, it's today, it's getting credit accumulation, it's helping those students move today. So in order to make those things happen, I think there are some important aspects to consider. And so what we're seeing now, again, is this emergence of dual enrollment, concurrent enrollment policy that's becoming really, really exciting for states. And when they call my office and they say, what should we do? And of course I say, well, I can't tell you what to do, I can tell you where we're seeing things work. And so let's talk about those. And we went without slides today, hope that's okay. I'll keep moving. So working a joke or two. But we decided to go slide free today. So first, elimination of artificial barriers to entry. So what are those artificial barriers? When we looked at our policy, so Tim and Don right over here, and Don, you can wave your hand. So Don here used to be, he helped to create the program in Aurora. Don actually just celebrated his 30th birthday. We put him through a lot over the last few years. And he decided to retire and say, I've had enough of this. And Tim, I'm pretty sure, Tim's a quiet, pretty subdued guy, but if you ever talk to Tim, he'll tell you about how angry he was at me at certain times when the paperwork was just overwhelming. I'm pretty sure he didn't see anyone outside of his office for weeks. But elimination of artificial barriers. When we started looking at the Colorado policy, we realized we actually had 4 different policies. Now I'm not going to ask you to raise your hands, but think about your own state. Do you have multiple policies? I know a few of you do. I've seen them. Again, we're NSA. We know. We've seen it. So we have 4 separate policies with 4 separate sets of target audience or target student populations with 4 separate funding structures and 4 different ways in which you could become eligible for those programs. So what we said is, time out. Can we have one policy? And that one policy should be comprehensive. It should cover everything. Now let's get rid of the things that don't matter. And so the things that don't matter are, how old are you? Doesn't matter. Why should it matter? I had this big debate, Tim was there, had this debate with I think it was our chemistry faculty, one of our faculty groups, and they said, I don't want students who are younger than 17. And I said, why? If they're eligible to do the work in the classroom and they're sufficiently motivated and they have the support to do well, why does it matter? Shouldn't they be eligible based upon their ability? Shouldn't it be based upon what they can do, not about some arbitrary standard that we just invented because that just sounds right? So we had to start thinking about eliminate age restrictions, make it on ability only. Make it, are you eligible for the course and can you handle the curriculum? And if so, make that, let this be a decision for the school and the student to make. Don't create state policies that create some standard that doesn't really have any basis in sort of good practice. The other kind of arbitrary policy is based upon grade level. So this is where the gifted community, they came to me when I was writing this legislation, and they were really excited because they said, I have 8th graders who are doing college calculus, but they're not allowed to enroll because the state law says they have to be an 11th grader. But they don't want to go into 11th grade. They just happen to be accelerated students. What should I do? And so this is another one to consider. How do we get rid of things that sounded good 20 years ago, 30 years ago when we first wrote them, but may now not fit in this environment where 80% of our students have to graduate from college? So thinking about what are these things that are in place in your states, and again, I'm not making any reference to a specific state, it's just think about the things that are in place that are non-academic and have that have the potential to restrict student access. So another one is to specifically authorize that dual enrollment, concurrent enrollment is for all programs, all post-secondary degree types, all courses, including career and tech ed. And so this is an area where our old policy, at least in Colorado, was very focused on the gifted student. This was for the student who had exhausted all of their options in high school, had gone beyond AP, who was now moving on. They're like, you know, they're going into like 5th year Latin. There aren't a whole lot of high schools like offering that. And even if they were, they'd probably say, sorry kid, like however you say that in Latin. But if you think about this, you know, we had to be very specific because we had principals in particular, when we said, no, career and tech ed, you can absolutely, why wouldn't you? Why is respiratory therapy somehow not a post-secondary curriculum? It is. Why would we create a perverse incentive that says, drop out of high school, go to the community college and enroll in the program you really want? Because that is an option for some students. Why don't we just say, we want, as Sherry said, all programs, all degrees, certificates, associates, bachelors, we need more. Give them the chance as soon as they're ready. Let them move once they're ready. So this is another one to think about. And does your law or do your policies speak to all programs? And how do you create that? And I have to say this is actually a very exciting area for K-12, where many of you know, during the last several decades, career and tech ed programs in the high schools have really diminished a lot. And it's just because they're high cost, they're sometimes lower enrollment, and so it's harder to keep up with new technologies. And this is a great partnership area for colleges and community colleges in particular to step in and fill that void and say, we do have, in the community college sector, the ability to potentially keep up with the technology. We do have advanced training that we can offer, and how do we do this in partnership to make sure that our workforce is sufficiently educated to meet the demands of our employers? Ensuring that all delivery models are available to students, and that means online, compressed schedules, stretch schedules. So we had a program in Aurora where students would take 3 credit hours or 4 credit hours over the year, and so making sure that the funding structures recognized what that meant, so that they may have had what would have been a 15-week schedule on a fall semester maybe become a 30-week academic year for 3 credit hours, allowing stretch, allow compression, allow summer, allow online. Give these kinds of tools. Our Denver friends, where's Denver? Charles, there's Denver over here. Denver's now doing in what we did in Colorado, and I would say this is an option. You think about it if it makes sense to you. Colorado, we changed our law and said, why do we say that we have an 11th grade ACT in Colorado, compulsory, so we know where students are scoring. We know who's remedial going into the 12th grade year, and then we wait, and then we give them remediation when they get to college. Why don't we just give them the option when they're in 12th grade? We know the evidence, like that we saw the 11th grade score. You can give them the 12th grade option. Why not just give them that option? So we created this 12th grade remedial opportunity. It wasn't a mandate, it just was authority to offer post-secondary remedial instruction in the 12th grade. Denver's gone through a really neat program now where now they have summer boot camps. And they're taking the students through during that summer schedule and allowing those students that scored low to take care of remediation before they even go into the 12th grade year. Correct? Correct. Charles will help you with that if you have questions. All right, Charles? Yes. Okay. Creating predictable financial models. How many of you have no guidance at the state level regarding how your financing works? It's kind of left to the districts. I have to say that it's not unusual. We see this all the time, and this is an area to consider. Not to mandate what the right cost is. I'm teaching a higher ed finance class right now. This is my background, and so my students are probably like, oh gosh, like, really give him a chance to talk about this? They're really sick of it. But the financial piece that I think actually enables growth is to have predictability for budgeting purposes and allowing the K-12 districts to understand what to expect when enrollment grows. And so what we did, and whether or not that's the right thing to do, but in Colorado what we did is we said all high schools will have a maximum reimbursement level. And that reimbursement level was the community college tuition rate. And that happens to be a common rate in our state. And that was no knock against the 4 years of the privates. The 4 years in the privates are actually eligible to participate, but we said the funding had to be limited at the community college rate. And the reason why we did that was, one, we needed predictability. We needed to know when you have a new program come on that the principals understood what the cost structures looked like and they could budget against it a year in advance. So they knew what it would look like without having to guess. The other part was that we have a standard that I'm sure is true in most of your states. We had a standard that said thorough and uniform education. So it had to be consistent. So if you lived in a rural, small, tiny little Eastern Plains town, or Denver Metro downtown, or lived up in Vail, it didn't matter. It wasn't an accident of birth that entitled you to a different funding source or a different funding level. Everybody got the same benefit. And so in doing that, we allowed the creation of consistent patterns of enrollment and allowing students to participate. Enabling the routine sharing of data. This may sound like sort of a, well, yeah. But I can tell you that this goes far beyond just doing reports. This goes into the business models. And so what we started doing in Aurora is actually doing full data sharing between the district and the college. Full, like their entire student unit record system came into our student unit record system. And the reason why we started doing that was we have nearly, I guess Tim told me just a few minutes ago, 2,980 something students that were enrolled last year. That's a lot of paperwork. And my registrar used to scream at me, and trust me, she means business. And I was scared. So I said, I'll fix it, we'll take care of this. So we came up with this data sharing agreement where what it allowed us to do is that we allowed the K-12 and the higher ed institution to have full integration of data sets, and it allowed us to just automatically register students. So the paperwork was minimized to about a half a sheet of paper. Like it was just this little box that the records were automatically pulled up into Banner. And so there are things that you can consider that you just need to think about. Is it allowed? Does your state specifically say for this business reason you can make these kinds of things happen? So again, it goes beyond sending a report to the high school saying here's how many students took the course. But it also gets back to helping send grades back to the high school. So you can do some of this where it's automated. So it's not printing a bunch of transcripts and sending them over. You just automatically send it over. So the last thing I think, and this goes to, and there are others, but I'll finish here, is what we just heard about this Common Core, college and career readiness. And again, I'm not going to ask, I know what's going on in the States. I heard it. I heard it on NPR on the way over. So I don't really take a position. It's not my job, but I will say college and career readiness is a near universal expectation across all the states. Right? So whether you call it Common Core, you call it Florida Core, you call it something else, or Hoosier Core is what I heard might be happening in Indiana, and fine, Texas has their standards, Virginia has their standards, fine. But once you establish what it means to be college and career ready without remediation, that does seem to be a consistent definition. Whether or not it's the same definition in Texas as it is in Virginia, as it is in Iowa, okay, let's just kind of park that for a moment. But the fact that you have a definition of what it means to be college and career ready, this is your anchor point. This is the place where you can now start leveraging this policy. So it's not trying to weigh what it means to be college ready against what some college thinks it is. It allows you to have some consistency. So you now know, maybe it's a 10th grader who is college and career ready. Let's accelerate that student. But we have a common definition that needs to be embedded in both systems. So the question now goes beyond what does it mean to be college and career ready, and it goes into how do you use that definition to enable students to grow in these programs. And that becomes really the most critical component. It's not about accountability. It's not about funding. It's not about school turnaround. It's about how does this definition enable more students to make progress. And that's where it becomes really important. So a couple of things just to consider in closing. And we're going to have more time, so they've asked us to stick around. If any of you want to talk about this, and Sherry and I will be in a breakout session next, and we can get in more detail if you wish. And if not, go have fun at other sessions. I think they're great sessions, and you can call me anytime. You don't need to come to my session. But policy options to consider that are not specifically related to concurrent enrollment, but allow concurrent enrollment to expand greatly. Just a few things to think about. And these are things maybe you can kind of nudge different people to consider. One is guaranteed transfer of post-secondary credit. Do you have a guaranteed way to evaluate post-secondary credit? I'll tell you, this is one area where our high schools, so one of the high schools we have, I keep pointing at my friends here, we have one of our high schools that basically said, because we have a guaranteed system, that it doesn't matter if you go to the community college or to CU Boulder or to Colorado School of Mines or to CSU or any of these institutions, it's guaranteed in the course or in the subject and in the gen ed curriculum at which the student took the course. It's guaranteed to fit in the system. It really gave confidence to our K-12 principals, where they felt like, okay, now I can tell my parents why this is valuable. Now I can talk to my parents about the kid who's aspiring to be a petroleum engineer at the Colorado School of Mines, which has one of the highest academic profiles in the country. They can take a course at our community college that guarantees them English or math or science credit at that receiving institution. This is an enabling policy, so it's something to consider in putting on the table and thinking about how does that help your system create more traction. Governance. This is another, it's kind of outside of the area. We realize that in our state, and this is rare, it's rare that states have what I'm going to describe. It's actually quite common, the problem we had. And the problem is that neither K-12 nor higher ed really owned the policy. The practitioners owned the policy. So our dual enrollment, it was the people on the ground who really ran the policy. But the boards sort of didn't know what to do with it. They were like, well, isn't this your problem, higher ed? And higher ed was like, no, isn't this your problem? And what we did is we created a statewide advisory board. And all their job is, all they do, Don's on the board, all they do is assist practitioners and the state both interpret what works and how to create effective programs. So they assist districts in creating common materials, they have common agreements, they have common financial structures, they will assist when there are questions that come up, they have a place to go. And then they also provide recommendations back to the legislature and say, hey legislature, did you realize that you kind of screwed up over here? This would be an area that if you want to improve, you may not have missed it. You know, I like to think that my policy was perfect, it's not, so Don, that's his job, is to make sure that he points out where I failed. And so it's sort of it's a very common thing that he's been doing for years. So the last thing is about common placement. Does your state have a consistent way in which you evaluate placement into different courses? Do you know what remedial placement means across the state, or is it institution to institution to institution? And again, I know the answer. We're NSA friends, and I got a badge. We do monitor this, and this is not, I'm not going to call anyone out, but I think it is something that as you think about, well, so I'm trying to get, like the K-12 system is all subject to the same standard, whatever that is, right? So college and career ready, whatever your state tells you that needs to be. Proficient, whatever that means in your state. When they enter into the post-secondary sector, is it now subject to a separate determination? So does the receiving institution make a new decision about whether or not that student's ready? And again, I say this as, so this is grist for the mill, something to think about. This is not concurrent enrollment policy per se, but this allows consistency for high schools to understand what students will be eligible. How do I get them into the next course? Will the course be transferable? These are the pieces that are around that puzzle that are not just concurrent enrollment, but enable the growth of these kinds of programs. So things to consider for your states. So before I close, I'll tell you a quick story, and then we'll be available for anything that you wish following. And that is, so when we were first growing these programs, I went from being the person at the Capitol who wrote the policy and was really hoping it would work, and then going to campus and saying, okay, how do we make this work? So it's in this unique position. So Don and Tim, they used to have we had these meetings with counselors and principals, and I would come in and talk to them and say, no, this is a good thing, let's go ahead and do this, and really don't worry, it'll all work out. But I remember Don introduced me to one of the principals, and one of the principals from this high school that had a very large concurrent enrollment program, very, very, very large. I think it was nearly 30 or 40% of the students in the high school were all enrolled in dual enrollment courses. And this is a very diverse high school. I think it was like 80% Latino, like a very diverse school, a very low income school. And the principal came up to me and she said, you know, she's like, I really love this, but I'm not sure what's next. And I said, well, what do you mean? Like, what do you mean what's next? And she said to me, it's so big that I can't tell where high school ends and college begins. And she's like, and I'm having a hard time telling my parents like where that point is. And I said, but isn't that the point? Like, isn't that exactly what we wanted? And so I think this is that as you grow and as these programs expand, I think it's embracing this idea of sort of joint ownership. As an economist, we call this joint production. So this joint production of K-12 and higher education is something that is scary. It has a lot of new, it requires a lot of new work. It requires policies to support it. But as you heard, we had a site visit that was, we didn't know, we didn't invite it. They called us and they said, hey, we're a higher learning commission and we need to come check on 4 of your high schools. And I said, why? And they said, well, we understand that you can earn an associate's degree through these high schools. I said, is that a problem? And they said, maybe. We need to come check. Okay, come on out. So they came and checked, and the moral of the story is we did everything right. We tried to make sure that it was exactly identical to the experience at the high school. It was exactly the same as what they had. It's the quality standards for NACEP. It's exactly the same thing that NACEP advocates. That's what we did. And what happened is we ended up with 4 high schools in Aurora that are actually accredited college sites. They still are today. And you can see them. And Tim will tell you all about them. Tim, raise your hand so they know. So Tim can help explain what that's meant. And what it means is we can issue associate's degrees in the high schools before the students graduate from college. And it's an accredited activity. So I'll stop there. Congratulations. Welcome to Jax. And we'll be here for questions for the next couple of hours if you have any. Thanks so much.